Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Oops in History. Tonight, we're going to drift into the strange, sometimes funny, and always fascinating world of medieval sleep. Now, you might think sleep has always been as simple as climbing into bed and closing your eyes. But in medieval Europe, bedtime was anything but ordinary. From upside-down hammocks to beds shared with animals, people had some truly weird ways of getting their tie. Imagine walking into a medieval home after a long day, the sun long gone, the air cool and filled with the scent of burning tallow from candles. There's no soft mattress waiting for you, no perfectly fluffed pillow, just wooden boards, straw, or perhaps a thin layer of wool, and maybe, just maybe, a blanket if your household was lucky. And there, in the dim candlelight, people are settling into the strangest sleeping positions you can imagine. Some slept upright against walls or chairs, leaning forward or sideways, trying to catch a few moments of rest while keeping warm. Others curled tightly into themselves, almost like little human burritos, conserving heat in rooms that were drafty and cold. And it wasn't just humans joining the sleep party. Dogs, cats, chickens, even pigs sometimes shared the same bed. Warmth was warmth, no matter how furry or snorty your companion might be. And then came the sounds. Snoring was practically a household symphony. Some people snored so loudly that it could wake others in neighboring rooms. Some muttered in their sleep, groaning, gasping, or even talking nonsense. Imagine lying there, trying to rest, while a pig snores beside your feet, and your brother kicks in his sleep like he is trying to wrestle an invisible opponent. Sleep was rarely quiet, it was a full-on performance. One of the more peculiar things about medieval sleep was the concept of segmented sleep. Instead of sleeping straight through the night like we do today, people often had a first sleep and a second sleep. Between these two periods, they might rise for prayer, reflection, chores, or even a quiet conversation. Candles would flicker, the house would stir with soft footsteps and whispers, and the darkness was alive with activity. Night wasn't a time for stillness, it was just another part of the day, used in unique ways. And don't forget the furniture, or rather, the lack of it. Beds were not the plush, high-tech affairs we know today. A simple wooden frame with a straw-filled mattress or some wool was considered luxury enough. Some wealthier homes had elevated beds with curtains to block drafts, insects, or nosy neighbors. People sometimes used sticks, ropes, or wooden props to maintain certain sleeping positions that might look downright uncomfortable to our modern eyes, but were perfectly normal then. Animals weren't just companions, they were part of the sleep strategy. Cats curled up for warmth and to ward off pests. Dogs laid guard at the foot of the bed, and in rural homes, pigs or chickens might even sleep inside to keep warm. Human and animal warmth intertwined in ways that are both practical and, admittedly, a little weird to think about today. Even the way people prepared for bed was unusual by modern standards. Feet were washed or wiped with herbs, charms might be tucked under pillows, and prayers whispered to guard against nightmares or spirits. In some noble households, servants had night duties, adjusting blankets, watching over sleepers, and ensuring that everyone was safe. Sleep was not a private activity, it was a carefully orchestrated part of domestic life. In villages and towns, the sounds, smells, and movements of the household created a lively nighttime environment. Imagine a room where a cat sneaks past your legs, your sibling shifts position, a dog growls at a passing mouse, and someone snores so loudly it feels like the room might shake. It was cozy chaos, and it was normal. And as we wander further into the strange world of medieval sleep, we discover even more unusual habits. Sleeping in hammocks, beds shared among extended family, children tucked in between adults, people propping themselves upright with sticks or lying on their sides, with heads slightly elevated to escape drafts. Every household had its quirks, and every sleeper had a story. Now, let's talk about some of the really weird sleep habits that medieval people had. You might think sleeping in a bed is normal, but in some places, people slept in ways that make modern beds look boring. For instance, in certain villages, men and women would sleep in a seated position, leaning against walls or wooden supports, especially in winter. This was practical, it kept their backs warm, reduced drafts, and helped them get up quickly for chores or prayers. Imagine trying to sleep like that after a long day of plowing fields or carrying buckets of water. Your arms might cramp, your neck would ache, but it was considered perfectly normal. And speaking of normal, some medieval people slept in beds shared with their entire family. Not just parents and children, but sometimes extended relatives, neighbors, or even visitors. The logic was simple: warmth, safety, and efficiency. There were no central heating systems, no electric blankets, and wood-burning stoves, only heated certain rooms, so the more bodies, the better. Of course, this meant that beds were often overcrowded, people slept in odd positions, and anyone with a snoring problem could be in for a rough night. Animals were also key players in sleep arrangements. Cats curled up to keep mice away, dogs slept by the fire or under beds for protection, and in some rural homes, pigs or chickens literally shared sleeping quarters with humans. Sometimes the animals were there for warmth, sometimes for superstition. People believed that sleeping near certain animals could protect against evil spirits. The idea of cozying up with a pig might make you giggle, but for medieval families, it was practical and comforting. Now, let's move on to something that might sound really bizarre: upside-down hammocks. Yes, you heard that right. In some regions, especially coastal or riverine areas, people hung small hammocks upside down, or at odd angles. This was partly for safety, partly for comfort, and partly because beds were often too short for taller individuals. Hammocks could be suspended from beams, rafters, or walls, and sleeping in them required a particular skill. One wrong roll in the night, and you could tumble to the floor, but somehow, people managed it just fine. Another strange habit was the use of sleeping sticks or props. Some individuals would place sticks or poles alongside or under their bodies to maintain a particular posture. This might sound painful, but it was actually quite practical. It helped with back pain, kept drafts from reaching critical areas, and sometimes even served as an early form of body support. While sleeping, imagine a man lying in bed with a stick propped under his legs or along his back, adjusting carefully before finally drifting off. And let's not forget segmented sleep. This is one of my favorite medieval sleep quirks. Unlike today, where we expect 8 continuous hours of sleep, medieval people often slept in 2 phases: a first sleep and a second sleep, separated by a quiet period in the middle of the night. During this wakeful interval, people might pray, meditate, write letters, check on household chores, or even socialize quietly. Some historians call this the first and second sleep, and it was completely normal. Modern people would probably call it insomnia, but for them, it was just part of the rhythm of life. Nighttime noises added to the unusual atmosphere. Snoring contests were unofficially common, and everyone had their own style of sleep: sounds, grunts, mumbles, and even occasional sleep talking. In inns or hostels, where travelers slept together, these sounds could echo across the room. Privacy was minimal, but warmth, camaraderie, and the odd humorous moment more than made up for it. Imagine lying in bed, half asleep, listening to a complete stranger snore so loudly that it vibrates your ribs, while your cat curls up on your chest. And the medieval mind was full of superstitions about sleep. Nightmares were taken seriously. People believed that evil spirits, witches, or bad omens could influence dreams. To prevent bad sleep, they might hang charms above the bed, place herbs under pillows, or whisper prayers before dozing off. Children were often tucked into unusual positions, believed to ensure safe and peaceful sleep. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about spiritual and physical protection. Even in urban homes, sleep could be peculiar. Wealthy citizens sometimes had elevated beds with curtains for warmth and privacy. Travelers in inns might have to share beds or sleep in narrow spaces, adjusting to whatever arrangements were available. Some used ropes or straps to keep themselves from rolling off wooden boards or uncomfortable mattresses. Beds were not just for sleeping, they were mini fortresses, designed to protect, support, and sometimes even entertain. By now, it's clear that medieval sleep was full of improvisation, adaptation, and downright creativity. From contorted positions to shared beds, from animals as co-sleepers to upside-down hammocks, sleep was a blend of necessity, superstition, and human ingenuity. And while it might look strange or funny to us today, for the medieval people themselves, it was just normal life, a mixture of comfort, survival, and a touch of chaos. Now, as we wander deeper into the weird world of medieval sleep, we find some truly creative ways people tried to stay comfortable and safe at night. For instance, in some homes, people would prop themselves upright on benches or chairs instead of lying flat. This might sound uncomfortable to us, but it served a purpose. It kept them warm, made it easier to get up for prayers or chores, and sometimes even helped with digestion after a heavy evening meal. Imagine sitting in a half-sleep, leaning against a wooden chair, trying not to topple over while the family dog curls at your feet. Some people had a habit that might make you chuckle, sleeping with one eye open. Not literally, of course, but many medieval individuals trained themselves to be partially alert while resting. This was especially common in households where danger, thieves, wild animals, or even feuding neighbors was a real possibility. So you'd have one person dozing lightly, ready to wake at the slightest noise, while everyone else snored obliviously. Safety first, even in dreamland. And then there were the multiple-purpose beds. Beds weren't just for sleep, they were also for storage, sitting, socializing, and sometimes even working. In small homes, a single wooden bed might serve as a dining bench by day and a sleeping space by night. Cushions and blankets were rearranged, people shifted positions, and somehow everyone managed to get some rest. It was a flexible, adaptable system that might baffle anyone used to modern bedroom setups. Let's not forget about the temperature challenges. Medieval rooms were drafty and cold in winter, hot in summer, and heating was uneven. People often slept with layers of blankets, or sometimes shared a single blanket among multiple sleepers. Heat conservation was crucial. If you had animals nearby, they helped. If not, you had to curl up tightly, limbs tucked, head protected by whatever you could find, a folded blanket, a small pillow, or even a wooden chest lid. In noble households, things could be just as quirky, though more luxurious. Canopied beds with heavy curtains were used to block drafts and provide privacy. Some people had separate mattresses for different body parts, extra pillows for elevation, and feather-filled bedding that made sleeping slightly more comfortable. Yet even the wealthy engaged in strange sleep practices. Propsticks, segmented sleep, and nighttime rituals were common across social classes. Then came the odd sleep positions for health. People believed that certain positions helped with ailments or boosted energy. For instance, lying on one side with legs bent might ease back pain, while sitting slightly upright could help with digestion. There was no mattress technology, no ergonomic designs, so humans improvised. Every twist, prop, or pillow substitute served a purpose, and every household had its own methods honed over generations. Animals, as always, played starring roles. Cats were often seen as protectors against evil spirits while humans slept, curling near heads or along the feet. Dogs were faithful night guards, occasionally growling to alert sleepers to intruders or stray animals. In some rural homes, pigs or chickens even slept indoors, their warmth considered a boon during harsh winters. Imagine trying to keep your balance and warmth while a pig nudges your leg in the middle of the night. Sleep was never dull. Let's talk a bit about sleep rituals and charms. Many medieval people believed that evil spirits, nightmares, or curses could affect their dreams. To prevent this, they might hang herbs, symbols, or charms above their beds. Some whispered prayers or made small offerings before sleep. Children were often tucked into positions thought to ensure safety or good dreams. Beds became mini sanctuaries, combining practical warmth with spiritual protection. Now, here's something truly peculiar: hammocks, swings, and hanging beds. In certain regions, especially near rivers or coasts, people preferred hanging sleeping arrangements. A hammock, sometimes tied high and angled oddly, could protect against pests or damp floors. Some adventurous sleepers even learned to sleep upside down or partially suspended, a skill that sounds impressive and terrifying today. Imagine the balance and trust in your own body required to drift off to sleep like that. And finally, a word on social sleep culture. Sleep was not always private. People laughed, whispered, snored, and even conversed during the night. Guests might share a bed, and children might be tucked between parents or siblings. Nighttime was communal, layered with warmth, protection, and the occasional humorous moment, like a family member rolling over unexpectedly, or a pet stealing your pillow. Now, let's dive into one of the strangest and most fascinating aspects of medieval sleep: segmented sleep. Unlike today, where we expect to sleep straight through the night, medieval people often divided their sleep into two distinct periods. First sleep, a quiet, deep rest, would last a few hours, followed by a wakeful interval in the middle of the night. During this time, people didn't just stare at the ceiling, they prayed, reflected, wrote letters, or quietly tended to household chores. Some even visited neighbors for a brief chat. This wakeful period was perfectly normal, and in fact, it was considered the ideal time for reflection and creativity. Imagine sipping a small cup of warm ale or nibbling a bit of bread while your family snores softly around you. Nightmares and strange dreams were a serious concern during this segmented sleep. People believed that evil spirits, witches, or supernatural forces could influence their dreams, so protective rituals were common. Herbs might be tucked under pillows, charms hung above beds, or prayers whispered into the dark. Children, in particular, were given extra protection. They might be positioned in specific ways or surrounded by small talismans to ensure peaceful rest. Even adults weren't exempt. Fear of nocturnal spirits influenced how they positioned themselves and their bedding. Regional variations made medieval sleep even more interesting. In northern climates, where nights were long and bitterly cold in winter, people slept in thick layers of blankets and often huddled together with family and animals to conserve warmth. In southern regions with milder climates, beds might be lighter, and people sometimes slept outdoors in courtyards, under simple shelters, or on rooftops, enjoying the cool night air. Coastal communities often preferred hammocks, raised above the ground to avoid dampness or pests. The environment shaped sleep habits in ways that might seem strange today, but were perfectly practical then. And it wasn't just positioning or environment. Medieval clothing played a big role too. Nightwear varied, from simple tunics to elaborate gowns for the wealthy. Women often wore dresses and head coverings, even to bed, partly for warmth, partly for modesty. Men sometimes wore hoods or layered garments, creating a snug, cocoon-like effect. Every detail mattered: warmth, comfort, and protection from drafts or unseen night spirits. Noise, as always, was part of the medieval sleep experience. Snoring, muttering, groaning, and even sleep-talking were all part of the nightly symphony. People didn't have private bedrooms like we do today. The sounds of family, neighbors, and animals traveled freely. Some households might even treat snoring as a minor competition, each member vying to outsnore the rest, though mostly unintentionally. And if a visitor happened to stay overnight, they would quickly learn that medieval sleep was a noisy, communal affair. Certain practices were specifically meant to ward off bad dreams or nighttime harm. Placing herbs like lavender, rosemary, or sage near the bed was common, thought to purify the air and protect sleepers from evil influences. Some families placed small religious symbols above the bed, and bedtime prayers were an essential part of the ritual. Even in wealthier households, spiritual protection mingled with practical warmth. The medieval night was not just about rest. It was about safeguarding body and soul alike. Now, let's touch on one of the quirkiest habits: sleeping in upright or semi-upright positions for health reasons. People believed that lying completely flat could cause bodily imbalances, or worsen conditions like indigestion or back pain. So chairs, benches, or even stacks of cushions became makeshift supports, allowing them to rest while maintaining these healthy postures. It might sound uncomfortable to us, but it was part of daily life and often quite effective. And of course, there were the animals again, who weren't just passive participants. Cats patrolled the room, dogs lay vigilantly near doorways, and in rural homes, even pigs or chickens were considered helpful co-sleepers. Their warmth and presence were valued, sometimes practically, sometimes superstitiously. Medieval sleep wasn't just human, it was a shared experience with furry, feathery, and occasionally squealing companions. Finally, nighttime storytelling was often intertwined with sleep itself. Families might recount tales before bedtime, sometimes legends of spirits, dragons, or heroic deeds. These stories weren't just entertainment, they shaped dreams, provided comfort, and reinforced social bonds. Imagine drifting off after hearing a tale of a brave knight or a mischievous spirit, curled up with siblings and pets, in a room filled with candlelight and the gentle hum of the night. Now, let's get into some of the truly extraordinary sleeping arrangements of the medieval world. People didn't just improvise with blankets or mattresses, they sometimes created entire contraptions to help them sleep safely, comfortably, or even ritually. One example is the use of sleeping props. Wooden sticks or poles were strategically placed to support the back, legs, or head, helping maintain posture and prevent discomfort. Imagine a farmer lying down, carefully arranging a stick along his spine, while a cat curls around his feet and a pig nudges his side. Sleep required skill, patience, and a bit of humor. Some beds were designed to keep sleepers elevated off the ground. This wasn't just for luxury, it protected against cold stone floors, moisture, or crawling insects. Simple wooden platforms or raised bed frames were common, sometimes topped with layers of straw or wool. In wealthier homes, elaborate four-poster beds with curtains were used, both to trap warmth and provide privacy. And if you think that's all, some creative souls even added ropes or cords to help maintain their position, almost like a primitive form of suspension bed. Then there were hammocks and hanging beds, especially in coastal or river communities. These could be angled strangely, requiring balance and care to sleep without tipping over. Some adventurous individuals even slept upside down, or partially suspended, skills that would make any modern sleeper nervous. But medieval people were practical, and their innovations often worked surprisingly well. Animals remained integral companions. Dogs lay at doorways to alert to intruders. Cats curled near heads to keep away spirits or pests. And in rural homes, pigs or chickens often shared the bed. Their presence wasn't just tolerated, it was essential for warmth, protection, and comfort. And while it might seem chaotic today, medieval people navigated this shared space with a routine that balanced safety, coziness, and social bonding. Odd sleep positions were also common for health reasons. People experimented with angles, cushions, and posture. Some slept sitting upright, others with legs bent tightly or propped against walls. There were beliefs that certain positions could aid digestion, improve circulation, or prevent illness. We might laugh at the contortions, but for them, it was all part of practical, everyday living. Wealthy households often layered bedding materials creatively. Feathers, wool, and blankets were stacked, creating mini towers to sleep upon. This might sound comfortable, but it could also be tricky to climb onto. Servants sometimes helped adjust or prop beds, making nighttime preparation a small event in itself. Sleeping was not passive, it was an activity requiring planning and attention. And let's not forget nighttime rituals linked to sleep. Herbs under pillows, charms above beds, whispered prayers, and even small religious items were common. Some households followed strict routines, with specific sequences for tucking in children, adjusting blankets, and ensuring spiritual protection. Sleep was intertwined with superstition, health, and household management. Finally, medieval people didn't always sleep through the night in one stretch. Many adhered to segmented sleep, rising midway for prayers, quiet reflection, or chores. This period of wakefulness was considered valuable, perfect for contemplation, creative thoughts, or simply checking on the household. Darkness wasn't a time for fear or inactivity. It was an opportunity for productivity, reflection, and preparation for the next day. Now, let's wander into some of the funniest and most unusual sleep stories from medieval times. Imagine a small village household, candlelight flickering, where everyone from grandparents to toddlers is trying to find a comfortable spot. The father might be wedged between a chest and the wall, the mother perched upright against a chair, while children tumble across a shared blanket like tiny, restless clouds. Add a cat sprawled across someone's face and a pig nudging an elbow, and you have a truly chaotic yet cozy scene. Some accounts even describe neighbors accidentally joining each other's beds during especially cold nights. Walls were thin, houses small, and sleeping spaces often communal. A weary traveler might knock on a friend's door and end up in bed with the family, sharing warmth, blankets, and perhaps an unintentional snore symphony. Modern viewers might laugh, but for medieval people, this was perfectly normal. After all, survival and warmth were more important than privacy. And speaking of funny, there are tales of people rolling out of bed in awkward ways. Beds weren't always stable. Straw mattresses could shift, cushions slide, and hammocks swing unexpectedly. Imagine someone gently tipping over a pile of blankets in the middle of the night, half asleep, only to be gently nudged back by a pet or a family member. Sleep was an adventure, and missteps were part of the charm. In some households, sleeping in unusual positions became almost ritualistic. A man might prop himself upright to ease a sore back, while the child beside him is twisted into a pretzel-like position to keep warm. Everyone adjusted constantly through the night, shifting, rolling, and moving blankets, creating a silent ballet of bodies, animals, and pillows. And yet, somehow, everyone managed to get rest, illustrating human adaptability in the most amusing ways. There were also weird communal arrangements in noble households. Guests, Servants and children might all share a large bedchamber, each with their own quirky sleeping habits. Some used ropes or straps to avoid rolling off high beds, while others slept on elevated platforms or thick layers of blankets that created soft towers. Observing such a room from above might have seemed chaotic, but inside it was surprisingly harmonious. Even dreams and nightmares added humor and strangeness. Some people believed that nightmares could be caused by mischievous spirits or bad food before bed. Remedies ranged from whispering prayers to hanging protective charms, and sometimes a good laugh with family members was considered the best medicine. Imagine a father muttering about a bad dream while the cat naps on his stomach, and the children giggling at the silly situation. It was comfort, protection, and entertainment all in one. And finally, let's not forget the pets as mischief makers. Cats would paw at faces, dogs would snore loudly at inappropriate times, and pigs might nudge anyone who encroached on their space. Sleep was never solitary, never quiet, and always a little unpredictable. But this unpredictability created a rhythm, a shared sense of humanity, and a bit of nightly comedy that modern people can only imagine. Medieval sleep, with its props, rituals, animals, and communal quirks, wasn't just functional, it was full of personality, warmth, and humor. Each night was a story unfolding in candlelight, a performance of survival, ingenuity, and shared humanity, and of course, first sleep and second sleep remained common. People often woke in the middle of the night for reflection, prayer, or quiet tasks. It was a time for contemplation, for tending to household needs, or simply for appreciating the stillness of the dark. The medieval night was fluid, flexible, and full of quiet productivity that might surprise modern sensibilities. Finally, it's important to remember that medieval sleep was never solitary. Humans, animals, and sometimes even neighbors intertwined in a shared nightly experience. Warmth, safety, superstition, and humor created a dynamic and living environment that was as much about social bonding as it was about rest. As night deepened across medieval villages, towns, and castles, sleep became a mixture of comfort, chaos, and creativity. One of the strangest aspects was the frequency of unusual mishaps. Imagine a household where a straw mattress shifts mid-sleep, sending someone tumbling toward the floor, while a cat leaps in surprise and a dog barks loudly, creating a symphony of nocturnal comedy. These were nightly dramas that modern sleepers would probably find exhausting, but for medieval people, it was simply part of life. In some areas, people had the habit of sleeping in partial daylight or dim moonlight. Windows were small, rooms were dark, and artificial light was limited to flickering candles or hearth fires. This meant that people often woke, shifted, or even performed small tasks under soft light before returning to sleep. The concept of a completely dark room wasn't necessary. Sleep was flexible, and people adapted naturally to their environment. Communal sleeping arrangements often produced funny situations. Families, animals, and sometimes even visiting neighbors shared rooms. A child might roll over a parent's arm, a cat might curl on someone's face, or a dog might hog the warmest corner. People learned to adjust, to laugh quietly, and to navigate this shared space with surprising skill. The night was alive with motion, sounds, and a sense of togetherness that modern solitary bedrooms rarely offer. And then there were protective rituals intertwined with humor. People believed spirits, witches, or even mischievous creatures could interfere with sleep. Herbs like lavender or rosemary might hang over a bed, charms might be tucked under pillows, and whispered prayers filled the quiet hours. Some families added playful practices, nudging children into particular positions, adjusting blankets for optimal warmth, or telling gentle jokes to lighten the nighttime mood. Safety and amusement often went hand in hand. Extreme habits persisted in various regions. Some people slept half upright on benches or chairs. Others experimented with suspended hammocks or angled beds, and a few even attempted sleeping upside down. While these positions seem bizarre today, there were practical solutions for warmth, comfort, or safety. It was a world where human creativity met necessity in wonderfully unexpected ways. Noise, too, played a critical role in nighttime life. Snoring, muttering, sighs, and occasional laughter created a dynamic soundscape. Unlike modern bedrooms, medieval sleep was rarely silent. Instead, it was a shared experience, a blend of human sounds, animal noises, and the gentle creaks and groans of wooden furniture. Each household had its rhythm, a unique melody of sleep that shaped dreams, comfort, and social bonds. Finally, nighttime storytelling and reflections often took place during segmented sleep. People might wake during the night to recount tales, meditate, or quietly check on family members. Candles burned low, shadows danced on walls, and the world felt intimate, alive, and slightly magical. Dreams, superstition, warmth, and humor all intertwined to create a nocturnal environment that was uniquely medieval. Sleep, in short, was an adventure, a mixture of practicality, ritual, creativity, and shared human experience. From cats curled on faces to pigs providing warmth, from upside-down hammocks to whispered prayers, every night was a performance of survival, comfort, and communal bonding. Now, let's wander into some of the funniest and most unusual sleep stories from medieval times. Imagine a small village household, candlelight flickering, where everyone from grandparents to toddlers is trying to find a comfortable spot. The father might be wedged between a chest and the wall, the mother perched upright against a chair, while children tumble across a shared blanket like tiny, restless clouds. Add a cat sprawled across someone's face and a pig nudging an elbow, and you have a truly chaotic yet cozy scene. Some accounts even describe neighbors accidentally joining each other's beds during especially cold nights. Walls were thin, houses small, and sleeping spaces often communal. A weary traveler might knock on a friend's door and end up in bed with the family, sharing warmth, blankets, and perhaps an unintentional snore symphony. Modern viewers might laugh, but for medieval people, this was perfectly normal. After all, survival and warmth were more important than privacy. And speaking of funny, there are tales of people rolling out of bed in awkward ways. Beds weren't always stable. Straw mattresses could shift, cushions slide, and hammocks swing unexpectedly. Imagine someone gently tipping over a pile of blankets in the middle of the night, half asleep, only to be gently nudged back by a pet or a family member. Sleep was an adventure, and missteps were part of the charm. In some households, sleeping in unusual positions became almost ritualistic. A man might prop himself upright to ease a sore back, while the child beside him is twisted into a pretzel-like position to keep warm. Everyone adjusted constantly through the night, shifting, rolling, and moving blankets, creating a silent ballet of bodies, animals, and pillows. And yet, somehow, everyone managed to get rest, illustrating human adaptability in the most amusing ways. There were also weird communal arrangements in noble households. Guests, servants, and children might all share a large bedchamber, each with their own quirky sleeping habits. Some used ropes or straps to avoid rolling off high beds, while others slept on elevated platforms or thick layers of blankets that created soft towers. Observing such a room from above might have seemed chaotic, but inside, it was surprisingly harmonious. Even dreams and nightmares added humor and strangeness. Some people believed that nightmares could be caused by mischievous spirits or bad food before bed. Remedies ranged from whispering prayers to hanging protective charms, and sometimes a good laugh with family members was considered the best medicine. Imagine a father muttering about a bad dream while the cat naps on his stomach, and the children giggling at the silly situation. It was comfort, protection, and entertainment all in one. And finally, let's not forget the pets. Cats would paw at faces, dogs would snore loudly at inappropriate times, and pigs might nudge anyone who encroached on their space. Sleep was never solitary, never quiet, and always a little unpredictable. But this unpredictability created a rhythm, a shared sense of humanity, and a bit of nightly comedy that modern people can only imagine. Medieval sleep, with its props, rituals, animals, and communal quirks, wasn't just functional, it was full of personality, warmth, and humor. Each night was a story unfolding in candlelight, a performance of survival, ingenuity, and shared humanity. Now, let's wander into some of the regional oddities of medieval sleep. In the cold northern regions, nights were long and icy, so people developed creative ways to stay warm. Entire families huddled together under layers of blankets, sharing body heat. Animals, too, were considered essential for warmth. Cats, dogs, and sometimes even pigs were welcomed into sleeping areas. The more bodies and fur, the warmer the night, a practical solution that might seem chaotic to modern eyes, but it worked perfectly. Meanwhile, in southern Europe, where winters were milder. People often slept outdoors or semi-out. Courtyards, rooftops, and simple open-air shelters were popular for escaping the heat of the day. Hammocks were common, sometimes slung between trees or beams, and some adventurous sleepers even experimented with partially suspended positions. Imagine drifting off under the stars, the night air cool on your face, while a cat weaves through your feet and someone snores gently nearby. A blend of adventure, practicality, and a touch of whimsy. Nighttime rituals were also crucial to the medieval sleep experience. Many believed that evil spirits, bad dreams, or witches could interfere with rest. To protect themselves, people hung herbs like rosemary, sage, or lavender near their beds. Charms, small religious icons, and even written prayers were tucked under pillows. Some whispered protective spells or repeated prayers as part of their bedtime routine. These practices weren't just superstition, they were woven into daily life, combining spiritual comfort with practical reassurance. Children had their own specialized routines. They were often positioned carefully in beds or cradles, surrounded by protective charms or family members. Some households even had dedicated sleep guides, parents or older siblings who gently adjusted blankets, checked that everyone was warm, and ensured that no one rolled into a draft. Safety, warmth, and a touch of ritual all came together in the family's bedtime choreography. And while comfort was a concern, practicality never took a back seat. Beds were elevated or propped for warmth, blankets were layered or shared, and many people adjusted their sleeping positions to aid digestion or relieve aches from the day's labor. Every night was a blend of necessity, adaptation, and creativity. Let's not forget the humorous side of these rituals. Imagine a household where a cat steals the child's blanket, a dog snores loudly, and someone's straw mattress shifts mid-sleep, causing a minor tumble. Even with all these quirks, people adapted, laughed quietly, and continued their nightly routines. Sleep was a communal, living thing, sometimes awkward, sometimes chaotic, always human. Some extreme practices included sleeping with weighted objects or props to prevent rolling, sitting partially upright to avoid drafts, or placing small sticks along the body to support posture. While it might look painful or odd to us, these methods were part of a long tradition of practical medieval ingenuity. And of course, first sleep and second sleep remained common. People often woke in the middle of the night for reflection, prayer, or quiet tasks. It was a time for contemplation, for tending to household needs, or simply for appreciating the stillness of the dark. The medieval night was fluid, flexible, and full of quiet productivity that might surprise modern sensibilities. Finally, it's important to remember that medieval sleep was never solitary. Humans, animals, and sometimes even neighbors intertwined in a shared nightly experience. Warmth, safety, superstition, and humor created a dynamic and living environment that was as much about social bonding as it was about rest. That as night deepened across medieval villages, towns, and castles, sleep became a mixture of comfort, chaos, and creativity. One of the strangest aspects was the frequency of unusual mishaps. Imagine a household where a straw mattress shifts mid-sleep, sending someone tumbling toward the floor, while a cat leaps in surprise and a dog barks loudly, creating a symphony of nocturnal comedy. These were nightly dramas that modern sleepers would probably find exhausting, but for medieval people, it was simply part of life. In some areas, people had the habit of sleeping in partial daylight or dim moonlight. Windows were small, rooms were dark, and artificial light was limited to flickering candles or hearth fires. This meant that people often woke, shifted, or even performed small tasks under soft light before returning to sleep. The concept of a completely dark room wasn't necessary. Sleep was flexible, and people adapted naturally to their environment. Communal sleeping arrangements often produced funny situations. Families, animals, and sometimes even visiting neighbors shared rooms. A child might roll over a parent's arm, a cat might curl on someone's face, or a dog might hog the warmest corner. People learned to adjust, to laugh quietly, and to navigate this shared space with surprising skill. The night was alive with motion, sounds, and a sense of togetherness that modern and solitary bedrooms rarely offer. And then there were protective rituals intertwined with humor. People believed spirits, witches, or even mischievous creatures could interfere with sleep. Herbs like lavender or rosemary might hang over a bed, charms might be tucked under pillows, and whispered prayers filled the quiet hours. Some families added playful practices, nudging children into particular positions, adjusting blankets for optimal warmth, or telling gentle jokes to lighten the nighttime mood. Safety and amusement often went hand in hand. Extreme habits persisted in various regions. Some people slept half upright on benches or chairs, others experimented with suspended hammocks or angled beds, and a few even attempted sleeping upside down. While these positions seem bizarre today, they were practical solutions for warmth, comfort, or safety. It was a world where human creativity met necessity in wonderfully unexpected ways. Noise, too, played a critical role in nighttime life. Snoring, muttering, sighs, and occasional laughter created a dynamic soundscape. Unlike modern bedrooms, medieval sleep was rarely silent. Instead, it was a shared experience, a blend of human sounds, animal noises, and the gentle creaks and groans of wooden furniture. Each household had its rhythm, a unique melody of sleep that shaped dreams, comfort, and social bonds. Finally, nighttime storytelling and reflections often took place during segmented sleep. People might wake during the night to recount tales, meditate, or quietly check on family members. Candles burned low, shadows danced on walls, and the world felt intimate, alive, and slightly magical. Dreams, superstition, warmth, and humor all intertwined to create a nocturnal environment that was uniquely medieval. Sleep, in short, was an adventure, a mixture of practicality, ritual, creativity, and shared human experience. From cats curled on faces to pigs providing warmth, from upside-down hammocks to whispered prayers, every night was a performance of survival, comfort, and communal bonding. Now, let's dive into some of the odd personal habits that medieval people had when it came to sleep. For example, some individuals had the habit of sleeping with one arm propped up or legs twisted in peculiar ways. Why? To stay warm, to ease back pain, or to make sure they didn't roll onto a cold stone floor. It might look uncomfortable to us today, but it was all about survival and comfort in a world without modern beds, heating, or ergonomic design. Superstitions were everywhere, and bedtime was no exception. People believed that nightmares could be caused by spirits, witches, or evil stars. To combat this, small charms, herbs, or even amulets were strategically placed near the bed. Children often had extra protections, like a talisman tucked into their pillow, or a family member gently adjusting blankets to ensure a peaceful night. Adults weren't exempt and whispered prayers. Others arranged small religious symbols above or beside them. Sleep wasn't just a biological necessity, it was a spiritual practice. Funny anecdotes abound in historical records. One story tells of a household where a pig shared the family bed, nudging everyone to adjust their positions. Meanwhile, a cat sprawled across the father's chest, and a young child rolled onto the dog, causing a chorus of groans, snorts, and muffled laughter. Despite the chaos, everyone managed to sleep. This illustrates perfectly how medieval people adapted to their environment, and how humor and human ingenuity were embedded in daily life. Some households even had nighttime helpers, siblings, older children, or servants who would check on sleepers, adjust blankets, or nudge pets away from children. It was a communal effort, ensuring everyone remained warm, safe, and comfortable. Nighttime wasn't solitary. It was shared, coordinated, and full of tiny, amusing interventions. In addition, medieval people experimented with layering themselves under blankets or sharing one large cover among multiple sleepers. This was not just for warmth, but also for comfort and social bonding. Animals often claimed the best spots, so humans had to negotiate sleeping space carefully. Imagine a family all squeezed under one blanket, animals intertwined, limbs and heads creating a complicated tangle, but everyone managed to find rest. Somehow, even the timing of sleep had its quirks. People often followed a rhythm dictated by the sun, seasons, and social obligations. During long winter nights, people might spend more hours in bed, huddled with family and animals. Summer nights were lighter, sometimes spent outdoors, enjoying cooler air while listening to the subtle sounds of the countryside. Sleep wasn't rigid, it was flexible, adaptive, and intertwined with daily life. Finally, let's not forget hygiene and preparation habits. Many people washed their feet or hands, tucked small herbs into their beds, or even adjusted straw mattresses before sleeping. These small routines, though seemingly mundane, were essential for comfort, warmth, and protection against disease or pests. Sleep was an activity, not just a passive state. It required planning, ritual, and a little bit of luck. Now, let's talk about some of the extreme sleeping positions that medieval people adopted. In colder regions, people often slept curled tightly in fetal positions, sometimes with multiple layers of blankets, sharing warmth with siblings or even animals. Others propped themselves partially upright with cushions, sticks, or benches, creating a human puzzle of limbs, blankets, and bodies. It might look like chaos, but it was actually a carefully orchestrated dance to survive cold nights, prevent stiffness, and sometimes even avoid drafty spots in the house. Nighttime reflections were also a big part of medieval sleep culture. People often woke during segmented sleep to pray, meditate, or quietly think about the day's events. Some would light a small candle, stretch, or even scribble notes if they were literate. This wasn't insomniate, it was a normal and valued period of wakefulness, a time for thought, contemplation, or spiritual practice. Imagine the calm of a dimly lit room, the gentle flicker of a candle, and the hushed sounds of a cat moving softly nearby. Communal interactions added humor and unpredictability. Imagine a household where siblings jostle for warmth, a dog snuffles at the foot of the bed, a cat sprawls on the mother's chest, and someone's straw mattress shifts mid-sleep. Each night was a coordinated performance, adjusting blankets, nudging pets, and accommodating rolling bodies. It was messy, warm, funny, and yet somehow peaceful. Sleep was as much about human connection as it was about rest. In inns or hostels, sleeping arrangements could get even more chaotic. Travelers often shared beds with strangers, creating a mix of snoring, shifting limbs, and occasional surprise awakenings. People had to navigate these crowded spaces, finding comfort amidst the noise and movement. Yet, despite the occasional tumble or accidental nudge, everyone adapted. Humor and patience were essential skills for a good night's sleep. Some people even employed small contraptions to improve sleep. Wooden supports, ropes, or angled mattresses helped maintain posture and prevent rolling off beds. In noble households, beds were elevated, stacked with cushions, or enclosed with curtains. Even simple adjustments like folding blankets or propping pillows were part of nightly preparation. Sleep required effort, creativity, and careful attention. Animals, of course, continued to play starring roles. Cats patrolled beds, dogs lay vigilantly near doors, and pigs or chickens in rural homes contributed warmth and occasional comic relief. These creatures were as integral to sleep as blankets, beds, or nighttime rituals. Their presence made the night lively, warm, and occasionally chaotic, but always human in experience. Finally, sleep was not only practical and communal, but deeply woven into daily life, culture, and belief. Nighttime offered a space for rest, reflection, ritual, humor, and human connection. From extreme positions to shared blankets, from animal companions to whispered prayers, every medieval night was a story, a performance, and a lesson in adaptability. Now, let's explore some of the weirdest sleep customs in medieval times. In many households, sleep wasn't just about lying down, it was a carefully structured activity. For instance, some families practiced early night rituals, tucking in children in specific positions, arranging animals nearby for warmth and protection, and ensuring blankets were layered just right. These customs varied by region, climate, and social status. But one thing was consistent: sleep required planning and attention. Health-related postures were another quirky aspect. People sometimes slept partially upright, with sticks, cushions, or ropes to maintain alignment and reduce aches from daily labor. Others curled tightly, twisted legs strategically, or propped themselves against walls or benches. These positions might look uncomfortable today, but they were practical solutions for warmth, digestion, and back health. People experimented constantly, learning what worked best for their bodies and their households. Humorous interactions were a constant part of the nightly routine. Families, neighbors, and animals created a dynamic and sometimes chaotic sleep environment. A child rolling over, a dog hogging the warmest corner, a cat sprawled across a pillow all added to the nightly comedy. Even minor mishaps, like someone slipping off a straw mattress or a blanket being stolen by an animal, were accepted with patience and often a quiet laugh. Medieval sleep was communal, adaptive, and full of personality. In inns or crowded homes, sleeping arrangements could become especially amusing. Travelers, locals, and animals all shared limited space, creating what might be called a sleeping tapestry, layers of bodies, blankets, and props, carefully arranged to maximize warmth and comfort. People learned to navigate these arrangements skillfully, finding creative ways to rest amidst noise, movement, and occasional chaos. Segmented sleep added another layer of complexity. Waking between first and second sleep allowed people to pray, write, or quietly engage with family members. It was a time for reflection, small tasks, or even gentle conversation. This pattern shows how medieval sleep was flexible, social, and integrated into the rhythms of daily life. Animals remained ever-present companions. Cats prowled, dogs lay guard, and pigs or chickens added warmth and occasional humor. People adapted their positions accordingly, ensuring harmony between humans and animals. The night was alive with motion, sound, and interaction, making sleep both functional and social. Finally, extreme or unusual sleeping positions revealed the ingenuity of medieval people. From elevated beds and angled boards to partially upright postures and layered blankets, every adjustment was purposeful. Sleep wasn't passive, it was a crafted experience, combining comfort, protection, health, humor, and social bonding. Each night was a story in itself, a blend of survival, tradition, and human creativity. Now, let's wander into some of the truly bizarre bedtime habits that medieval people practiced. One curious custom involved placing small objects or charms in strategic positions around the bed to ward off nightmares or evil spirits. Some families used herbs, some used tiny religious symbols, and others whispered protective prayers throughout the night. Children often had extra protections, special talismans, tucked under pillows, or a careful arrangement of blankets and cushions. It wasn't just superstition, it was a nightly ritual blending comfort, safety, and a touch of magic. Extreme sleeping postures were also common. People experimented with partially upright positions, angled boards, and sticks along the body to maintain posture or avoid rolling off beds. Others curled tightly under multiple blankets, or propped legs and heads in ways that might look uncomfortable today, but were perfectly functional. Every night, the human body became a puzzle of warmth, comfort, and practicality. Funny anecdotes abound. Imagine a small village household where a cat sprawls across the father's chest, a pig nudges a child, and the mother has to adjust blankets for everyone. Or, consider an inn where travelers, locals, and animals share the same sleeping space, each vying for warmth and comfort. Noise, shifting limbs, and occasional mishaps were constantly. People adapted, laughed quietly, and slept. Humor was built into the nightly routine. Some households had dedicated helpers, older siblings, parents, or servants who checked on sleepers, adjusted blankets, or nudged pets away. Sleep was a shared effort, combining care, protection, and a touch of comedy. Even small tasks, like folding a blanket or propping a cushion, became part of a larger nightly choreography that ensured everyone rested safely. Nighttime reflections during segmented sleep continued to play a role. People woke to pray, think, or quietly perform tasks. Candlelight flickered, shadows danced, and the quiet world offered a time for contemplation or connection. Sleep wasn't just physical rest, it was spiritual, mental, and social. Animals remained ever present. Cats prowled quietly, dogs lay alert near doors, and pigs or chickens contributed warmth and occasional amusement. Sleep was dynamic, lively, and full of interactions. Humans weren't alone, they shared their nights with creatures, family, and community. Finally, sleep arrangements, whether layered blankets, elevated beds, angled boards, or upright positions, reflected medieval ingenuity and adaptability. Each night was a blend of comfort, ritual, humor, and communal life. From protective charms to shared warmth, every medieval bedtime tells a story of creativity, survival, and humanity. 13. Now, as we drift further into the weird and wonderful world of medieval sleep, let's talk about some of the funniest misadventures that happened once the candle was snuffed and the house settled into darkness. One classic scenario might unfold in a small village home, with a family, pets, and even a few visiting neighbors all share a single room. Imagine a father wedged between a wall and a stack of blankets, trying not to roll onto a cat that insists on curling on his chest. Meanwhile, a child slowly drifts down the bed, rolling into the family pig that had been invited in for warmth. And the mother has to adjust layers of blankets midnight to make sure everyone survives the cold. The cacophony of snoring, grunting, and shifting limbs creates a scene that would be chaotic by modern standards, but in medieval life, it was just a normal night. In the northern regions, winters brought extra challenges. Nights could last for 16 hours or more, icy cold and dark. Villagers developed inventive ways to conserve warmth. Families huddled together tightly, sometimes pressing against walls for extra insulation. Animals weren't just tolerated, they were essential for survival. Dogs lay alert at the foot of the bed, cats prowled and curled against heads, and pigs or chickens sometimes contributed additional warmth. The human body became a living heat source. People learned to contort themselves in various positions, curling, twisting, and stacking limbs strategically to ensure maximum shared warmth. This might look uncomfortable or absurd to a modern observer, but medieval ingenuity made it work, and even the youngest children, tightly wrapped in blankets or straw, were part of the nightly choreography. In southern Europe, the story changed a bit. Nights were shorter and milder, so sleep arrangements could be looser. People sometimes slept semi-outdoors on rooftops, in courtyards, or under simple shelters. Hammocks swung between beams or trees, sometimes at odd angles. Some brave souls even attempted partially suspended or angled sleeping positions, designed to keep them off damp floors or away from pests. Picture a man slowly rocking in a hammock, balancing precariously, while a cat weaves through his feet and a gentle breeze whispers through the open-air courtyard. There's something almost cinematic about these nights, the mingling of practicality, adventure, and a bit of humor as humans and animals share the same nocturnal space. Sleep wasn't just about comfort or warmth. Ritual and superstition were heavily intertwined. Families believed that evil spirits, witches, or malevolent stars could disturb dreams or even health. To protect against these threats, small charms were tucked near beds. Herbs like rosemary and lavender hung above, and whispered prayers filled the quiet night air. Children often had additional protections, special talismans, careful arrangement of blankets, or even a sibling or parent tasked with watching over them. Adults weren't exempt. They too participated in rituals meant to ensure peaceful sleep. These protective measures weren't just superstition, they were psychological comfort, blending safety with the practical act of sleeping. And then there were the extreme sleeping postures. In many households, people slept partially upright, propped against walls, benches, or stacks of cushions. Wooden sticks or angled boards were sometimes placed along the body to maintain posture and prevent rolling onto hard floors. Others curled tightly, almost pretzel-like, or positioned themselves strategically to conserve heat. Every twist, prop, or contortion had a purpose: warmth, comfort, safety, or health. Modern sleepers might find these arrangements puzzling, even comical, but in the medieval mindset, they were practical solutions born from necessity and ingenuity. Now, let's talk about communal sleeping arrangements, which were both chaotic and amusing. Families, neighbors, and even traveling guests often shared the same bed or room. A father might wake to find a cat sprawled across his chest, a child clinging to his arm, and a dog nudging him from the side. Adjusting blankets became a nightly operation, and positioning everyone for warmth, comfort, and safety required planning and patience. Guests had to navigate these intricate sleeping arrangements. Carefully, one wrong move could result in a minor tumble or a startled pet. And yet, these situations fostered cooperation, adaptability, and a subtle, enduring humor. Medieval sleep was not just functional, it was communal theater, performed nightly with a cast of humans and animals alike. Humor also appeared in unexpected ways. Cats often stole blankets or claimed the warmest spots. Dogs snored at inappropriate times, and children occasionally rolled into inconvenient positions. Even minor misadventures, like slipping off a straw mattress, became part of the storytelling of everyday life. Households adapted with patience, laughter, and quiet ingenuity. These stories remind us that medieval sleep, while practical, was never dull. It was a lively mix of resourcefulness, chaos, and shared humanity. The concept of segmented sleep added another layer to nightly life. People typically slept in two distinct phases: a first sleep lasting several hours, followed by a wakeful period, and then a second sleep. This middle other night wakefulness was considered normal, even productive. Some prayed, others reflected on the day, and some quietly tended to chores or animals. Candlelight flickered softly, shadows danced across walls, and the world felt intimate and alive. This period of wakefulness also offered an opportunity for storytelling, quiet conversation, and reflection, an additional layer of rhythm to the night. Animals were deeply integrated into sleep routines. Cats prowled or curled near human heads, dogs lay vigilantly near doors, and pigs or chickens often slept indoors for warmth. People adjusted their own sleeping positions to accommodate these furry and feathery companions, weaving together a shared, adaptive, and sometimes comical nighttime choreography. Noise, movement, and unpredictability were constants, but they were embraced rather than feared. Even in noble households, bizarre sleeping habits persisted. Elevated beds, layered mattresses, canopies, and propped cushions created comfort, but also required careful nightly preparation. Servants sometimes assisted in arranging bedding, propping pillows, or adjusting layers to ensure the household slept peacefully. Extreme postures, layered blankets, and strategic arrangements were all part of the nightly routine, reflecting ingenuity, care, and a dash of extravagance. Rituals, superstition, and humor intersected seamlessly. Families whispered prayers, adjusted talismans, and shifted blankets while laughing quietly at minor mishaps. Protective charms, herbs, and simple nighttime routines created a sense of security. Even amidst the chaos of communal sleeping, noisy pets, and shifting mattresses, the medieval night was a living, breathing entity full of movement, care, and shared experience. And finally, medieval sleep was a story in itself. Each night combined warmth, ritual, protection, creativity, humor, and social bonding. People adapted to their environments, animals, and communities, finding comfort and rest in the most inventive ways. From curled positions to propped boards, from pets sprawled across beds to whispered prayers, every night was a performance, a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the enduring humor of daily life. 14. As we continue our journey into the peculiar and often hilarious world of medieval sleep, it becomes clear that nighttime was never simple. Every household, whether humble or noble, had its own rhythm, quirks, and nocturnal challenges. In many villages, small homes meant families shared rooms, beds, and sometimes even furniture. Children slept near parents, pets sprawled across blankets, and neighbors occasionally joined the communal space during cold nights. It was a mix of chaos, warmth, and shared humanity, a system that might seem overwhelming today, but worked beautifully in its context. One of the most fascinating aspects was the use of extreme sleeping contraptions. Medieval people were inventive. They crafted angled boards, ropes, and elevated platforms to support the body and prevent rolling. Cushions and blankets were stacked in layers to create mini towers, and sometimes people even slept partially suspended in hammocks. These arrangements were functional, providing comfort, warmth, and security, but they also added an element of whimsy. Imagine a nobleman carefully climbing into a high, layered bed, adjusting cushions for maximum support, while a cat winds around his ankles and a dog snores at the footboard. Each night was a carefully orchestrated performance of ingenuity and patience. In colder regions, people perfected the art of body contortion for warmth. Families curled together, limbs intertwined in strategic positions to share heat. Animals added extra layers of insulation. Dogs, cats, and even pigs huddled close to sleepers. Every movement mattered. A shift in position could disturb warmth, cause someone to fall off a straw mattress, or wake a napping child. Yet these minor mishaps were handled with humor and skill. Medieval sleep required observation, adaptability, and a touch of creativity, qualities that modern sleepers rarely need to practice. Rituals and superstition also influenced nighttime habits. Families often hung herbs like lavender and rosemary above beds, tucked protective charms under pillows, or whispered prayers to safeguard against nightmares and evil spirits. Children were given special protections, talismans, careful positioning in the bed, and even a parent or older sibling assigned as a sleep guardian. Adults, too, engaged in rituals, repeating prayers or adjusting protective objects. These practices weren't mere superstition, they were psychologically comforting and deeply integrated into daily life. Blending practicality with belief. Communal sleeping could lead to some humorous scenarios. Imagine a child rolling onto a dog, a cat sprawled across the mother's chest, and the father wedged awkwardly between a wall and a pile of blankets. Pets often claimed the coziest spots, forcing humans to adapt. Even traveling guests had to learn the rules: where to place limbs, how to share blankets, and how to navigate the nocturnal ballet of humans and animals. Noise, shifting bodies, and minor mishaps were constants, but they were accepted with patience, laughter, and ingenuity. Sleep was social, interactive, and inherently funny. In noble households, sleep could be elaborate. Beds were often elevated, curtained and layered with cushions and blankets, creating a combination of luxury and necessity. Servants assisted in preparing these beds, propping pillows, arranging blankets, and adjusting layers for warmth. Some beds even had ropes or wooden supports to prevent rolling or sagging. These extreme sleeping contraptions were not only functional but also a display of wealth and ingenuity. Imagine the coordination required, a household working together to prepare an elaborate sleeping arrangement, animals nearby, and everyone settling into a rhythm of comfort and safety. Segmented sleep added another layer of complexity. People commonly experienced first sleep and second sleep, with a wakeful period in between. This quiet interval was often used for prayer, reflection, small chores, or storytelling. Candlelight flickered softly, casting gentle shadows on walls, and the night felt intimate and alive. Segmented sleep offered both rest and productivity, showing that medieval people had a flexible, adaptive approach to nighttime. Unlike modern rigid schedules, their sleep adapted to light, seasons, household dynamics, and individual needs. Humorous interactions were inevitable. Cats stole blankets, dogs claimed warm corners, and children often rolled into inconvenient positions. Even minor mishaps, like slipping off a straw mattress or accidentally nudging a neighbor, became part of the nightly storytelling of everyday life. People adapted with laughter and patience, turning what might be chaos into a cozy, communal, and endearing routine. Sleep wasn't just functional, it was a shared adventure, full of humor and human ingenuity. Extreme positions were common. People sometimes slept partially upright, angled boards or props supporting the body, or curled tightly to conserve heat. Others layered blankets strategically, creating towers to climb into each night. Each adjustment had a purpose: warmth, safety, or health. Modern observers might see contortions, props, and layering as odd or even uncomfortable, but in the medieval mindset, these were practical solutions creatively applied to the necessities of survival. Pets played starring roles. Cats prowled and curled near human heads, dogs lay alert near doors, and pigs or chickens added warmth and occasional comic relief. Human sleep arrangements adapted around these companions, creating a dynamic and sometimes chaotic nocturnal choreography. Noise, movement, and unpredictability were constants, but embraced as part of life. People learned to navigate their environments with humor, creativity, and care. Finally, sleep itself was a story, a ritual, and a performance. Each night combined warmth, protection, ritual, humor, and social interaction. Families, neighbors, and animals intertwined, creating a lively and adaptive nocturnal world. From bizarre contraptions to curled positions, from pets sprawled across beds to whispered prayers and rituals, every medieval night was a testament to human ingenuity, resourcefulness, and humor. Sleep wasn't passive. It required attention, observation, and coordination. Each night told a story, a narrative of survival, creativity, and shared humanity. Every blanket, cushion, prop, and creature played a part. Every minor mishap, nudge, or laugh was a moment of connection. And in that chaotic, warm, and slightly hilarious world, medieval people found rest, comfort, and community, sometimes with a cat sprawled across their face, a dog snoring at their feet, and a child tucked tightly between them. The nocturnal world of medieval people might seem bizarre to us now, but it was perfectly normal, practical, and even joyful in its own way. From extreme sleeping contraptions to humorous household interactions, from rituals to pets, and from communal chaos to segmented sleep, every night was layered with warmth, care, and human creativity. In essence, medieval sleep was an adventure shared, living, and often funny experience that reflects the resilience, ingenuity, and humor of our ancestors. As we continue to wander through the nocturnal world of medieval people, it's fascinating to see how regional variations shaped sleep habits. In the cold northern regions, nights could stretch long and icy. People slept tightly huddled with family members and animals, layering blankets strategically to conserve heat. Pets weren't optional, they were vital. Cats curled on chests, dogs sprawled near feet, and pigs sometimes snuggled close for warmth. Sleeping positions were highly strategic, curling, twisting, or stacking bodies to maximize shared heat. Minor mishaps, a child rolling onto a dog, a blanket slipping, or a cat pawing at someone's face, were common, yet handled with patience and quiet laughter. Humor, ingenuity, and adaptation were central to surviving these long, dark nights. In contrast, southern regions with milder climates allowed more flexible sleeping arrangements. People often slept outdoors in courtyards or on rooftops, or in open-air shelters that provided cool nighttime breezes. Hammocks were common, sometimes angled creatively to avoid damp floors or pests. Imagine a man sleeping partially suspended in a hammock, a cat weaving between his legs, while the night air rustles gently. Sleep was as much about adventure as it was about rest. These outdoor arrangements sometimes led to unusual habits, propping the body at odd angles, layering blankets in unusual patterns, or even using makeshift ropes and beams to prevent falling. Weird health practices also influenced how people slept. Medieval people were conscious of aches, digestion, and general wellness, even in sleep. Sleeping partially upright, propping pillows, using angled boards, or curling tightly under multiple blankets were common strategies to relieve back pain, support digestion, or improve circulation. Some believed that certain postures helped prevent illness or discomfort. Layered blankets and strategic positioning weren't just about warmth, they were about surviving long winters, avoiding stiff muscles, and promoting general health in a time without modern medicine. Bedtime superstitions added another layer of intrigue and ritual. Many believed that nightmares and bad dreams were caused by spirits, witches, or malevolent forces. Protective charms, herbs like lavender and rosemary, small religious icons, and whispered prayers were common strategies. Children often had extra protections, talismans tucked under pillows, blankets arranged in particular ways, and older siblings or parents watching over them. Adults participated, repeating prayers or arranging protective objects. These rituals weren't only superstitious, they provided a psychological sense of safety, helping people feel secure and calm during long dark nights. Humor often coexisted with superstition. For instance, families might have a cat sprawled on a parent's chest, a dog nudging a child, or a pig claiming the warmest corner of the bed. Despite the chaos, rituals were carefully maintained. People learned to balance practicality, belief, and humor. A chaotic, lively, and social approach to sleep that might seem strange today, but was entirely normal for medieval households. Segmented sleep added yet another interesting layer. People often experienced first and second sleep, separated by a brief period of wakefulness. During this interval, they might pray, reflect, or engage in quiet activities. Some tended to household chores, others wrote notes or letters, and some simply rested quietly, enjoying the stillness of the night. Candlelight flickered, shadows danced on walls, and the nocturnal world felt intimate, alive, and flexible. Sleep wasn't passive, it was adaptive, communal, and deeply embedded in daily life and belief systems. Pets, again, played starring roles. Cats prowled quietly, dogs remained alert at doors, and pigs or chickens contributed warmth and occasional amusement. Human sleep arrangements adapted around these companions, creating a lively nocturnal choreography full of humor, warmth, and adaptability. People navigated shifting bodies, mischievous animals, and minor mishaps with patience, creativity, and quiet laughter. Sleep was as much about connection and shared experience as it was about rest. Finally, medieval sleep was multi-layered, flexible, and communal. From regional variations in climate and housing to weird health practices, protective rituals, extreme positions, and animal interactions, every night was a story of creativity, adaptation, and humor. Families, neighbors, and pets wove together a dynamic, lively, and sometimes chaotic sleeping world. blending warmth, safety, superstition, and shared humanity. Each night became a narrative, full of personality, strategy, and the quiet comedy of everyday life. As we dive deeper into the nocturnal world of medieval people, it's fascinating to discover the unusual sleep remedies they employed. People were inventive when it came to ensuring a good night's rest, often combining practicality, superstition, and a pinch of humor. For instance, some households placed warm stones or heated bricks under blankets to keep beds cozy during freezing nights. Others used herbs like lavender, rosemary, and mint, not just for scent, but also as a perceived protection against bad dreams or nighttime spirits. Some even tied small pouches of dried herbs to bedposts, whispering soft prayers over them before tucking in. Modern readers might find this charming or slightly odd, but in medieval households, it was considered essential for a peaceful night. Pets continued to play starring roles in these nightly routines. Cats prowled across beds, dogs snuggled near feet, and pigs or chickens contributed warmth. Pets were not merely companions, they were an integral part of survival. A well-placed dog could alert a family to danger or keep smaller animals in check, while cats helped keep pests away from bedding. Animals added warmth, utility, and a touch of comic relief. Imagine a cat curling tightly across a mother's chest, while a child rolls into a pig, and the father carefully navigates this furry chaos without disturbing the carefully arranged blankets. Humor was built into these nocturnal arrangements, a quiet comedy that repeated night after night. Household routines often included minor nighttime interventions, which were part protective, part practical, and part amusing. Older children or servants would check on sleepers, adjust blankets, and gently nudge pets back to their designated spots. Sometimes, minor mishaps occurred. A child rolled off a straw mattress, a cat clawed at a blanket, or a dog snored loudly enough to wake someone. But these incidents were embraced with patience and gentle laughter. The chaos was part of the experience, and households developed an intuitive rhythm to handle it. Weird remedies for sleep were also common. Some people believed that drinking warm herbal teas before bed, or placing a small pillow under one's knees, could aid digestion and improve sleep quality. Others experimented with elevated beds or stacking blankets to create height, partly to stay away from drafts or pests. While these techniques may seem peculiar today, they were practical adaptations to the challenges of medieval life. Sleep was approached as an art and a science, balancing comfort, health, warmth, and protection. Humor often emerged from the sheer unpredictability of medieval sleep. Imagine a noble household where cats claimed the coziest spots, dogs adjusted their position midnight, and children shifted positions constantly. Even minor mishaps, like someone slipping off a straw mattress or accidentally nudging another sleeper, became part of the nightly story. Families adapted with patience and humor, accepting these quirks as normal and often amusing. These interactions reveal the human side of medieval sleep, inventive, communal, and delightfully imperfect. Segmented sleep remained a fascinating feature. People would wake between their first and second sleep to perform small tasks, reflect, or pray. Some would quietly check on children, adjust blankets, or even interact with visiting neighbors. Candlelight flickered softly, casting shadows on walls, and the night felt alive with motion, sound, and gentle human activity. This wakeful period was valued, a unique rhythm that provided both rest and a sense of control over the night. Pets were central to the rhythm of sleep. Cats prowled silently, dogs lay alert near doors, and pigs or chickens snuggled in for warmth. People adapted their sleep positions to accommodate these animals, ensuring everyone remained cozy and safe. Noise, movement, and unpredictability were constants, but embraced with humor and ingenuity. Each night became a living story, full of warmth, interaction, and shared experience. Finally, unusual sleeping arrangements reflected both practicality and creativity. From elevated beds and stacked blankets to angled boards and partially upright positions, every adjustment had a purpose: warmth, comfort, or protection. Families, animals, and even visitors coordinated seamlessly, navigating minor mishaps and humorous events with patience and care. Sleep was never passive, was a choreographed activity, a combination of survival, ingenuity, and humor. In essence, medieval sleep was a shared, dynamic, and sometimes chaotic adventure. Each household had its unique rhythms, quirks, and nocturnal rituals, blending warmth, superstition, pets, and humor. From unusual remedies to playful misadventures, every night was a story of human creativity and adaptability. The medieval night was alive, full of movement, sound, and connection, a vibrant tapestry of rest, protection, and laughter. As we continue our exploration of medieval sleep, it's fascinating to notice how regional quirks influenced bedtime routines. In colder northern regions, long dark nights required extra warmth and clever positioning. Families often huddled tightly, intertwining limbs and layering blankets strategically. Pets were essential, not optional, providing extra heat and comfort. Cats curled near heads, dogs sprawled at feet, and pigs sometimes claimed the warmest corners. Even minor shifts, a child rolling onto a dog, a cat pawing at a sleeper, or a blanket slipping, were navigated with patience, humor, and ingenuity. Medieval households developed a silent rhythm for these nightly adjustments, creating a cozy, communal atmosphere. Despite the cold in warmer southern regions, sleep often took on a different rhythm. Nights were shorter, and outdoor or semi-open sleeping arrangements were common. People sometimes slept on rooftops, in courtyards, or in open-air shelters. Hammocks and angled beds were frequent solutions to avoid damp floors or pests. Imagine a man adjusting himself carefully in a hammock, while a cat weaves around his legs and the cool night breeze rustles through the courtyard. These setups might seem precarious today, but they were practical solutions that blended comfort, novelty, and a touch of adventure. Extreme night rituals were also prevalent. Some households engaged in elaborate protective measures, placing charms, herbs, or talismans near beds, whispering prayers, or arranging objects in specific patterns to ward off spirits or nightmares. Children often had additional protections, and adults, too, participated in nightly rituals that combined practicality with superstition. These habits weren't just about belief, they offered psychological comfort, helping people feel secure in the long, dark hours of the night. Humorous sleeping mishaps were a constant. In a single household, one might find a cat sprawled across the mother's chest, a child rolled into a pig, and the father wedged awkwardly between a wall and a pile of blankets. Pets often stole the warmest spots, forcing humans to adapt. Even minor slips or tumbles, falling off straw mattresses, nudging neighbors, or dislodging blankets were accepted with patience and laughter. Medieval sleep was chaotic, communal, and imbued with quiet comedy, a stark contrast to the solitary, silent sleep many of us expect today. In noble households, sleep could be elaborate and intricate. Beds were elevated, curtained, and layered with cushions and blankets. Servants assisted with nightly preparations, propping pillows, arranging blankets, and ensuring warmth. Some beds included ropes or angled supports to maintain posture or prevent rolling. These elaborate setups were both functional and a display of status. The nightly routine required coordination, patience, and attention to detail, turning sleep into an organized performance. Segmented sleep remained a unique feature. People commonly experienced first and second sleep, with a wakeful interval in between. This quiet period was often used for reflection, prayer, small household chores, or storytelling. Candlelight flickered softly, shadows danced on walls, and the world felt intimate and alive. Unlike modern rigid schedules, medieval people adapted their sleep to natural rhythms, seasonal changes, and household dynamics. The night became a flexible and dynamic space, blending rest with reflection and social interaction. Pets played a starring role throughout the night. Cats prowled quietly, dogs remained alert near doors, and pigs or chickens snuggled in for warmth. People adjusted their sleep positions to accommodate these companions, creating a lively nocturnal choreography full of warmth, humor, and adaptability. Noise, movement, and unpredictability were constants, but were embraced as part of the household rhythm. Even unusual sleeping arrangements reflected creativity and practicality. From stacked blankets and angled boards to elevated beds and partially upright positions, every adjustment had a purpose: warmth, comfort, safety, or health. Families, animals, and sometimes visiting neighbors coordinated seamlessly, navigating minor mishaps and humorous events with patience and care. Sleep was never passive, it was a choreographed activity, blending survival, ingenuity, and comedy. Finally, medieval sleep was multi-layered, communal, and full of personality. Every household had unique quirks, rhythms, and nocturnal rituals. From regional variations to extreme positions, protective charms, segmented sleep, and humorous mishaps, every night was a story of human ingenuity, adaptation, and humor. Families, pets, and neighbors wove together a dynamic and lively sleeping world, blending warmth, safety, superstition, and shared humanity. Each night became a living narrative, cozy, chaotic, and endearing reflection of medieval life. As we enter the 19th chapter of our journey through medieval sleep, it becomes clear that bedtime was never simple or uniform. People employed a variety of bizarre tools and props to make nights more comfortable, safer, and even a bit amusing. Wooden boards, ropes, angled pillows, stacked blankets, and cushions were common, each serving a practical purpose, supporting the body, preventing rolling off beds, conserving warmth, or simply elevating a sleeper above a drafty floor. In some homes, clever contraptions were created to allow people to sleep partially upright or to keep pets from claiming the most coveted spots. These tools might seem strange to a modern observer, but they were brilliant solutions to the everyday challenges of sleep in medieval life. Usual personal. Habits also played a key role. Many people adopted strategic sleeping postures to address physical ailments or environmental challenges. Curling tightly under blankets, propping heads with multiple cushions, angling legs against walls, or even stacking blankets to create height, were all part of the nightly routine. Some believed these positions promoted health, aided digestion, or prevented stiffness after long days of labor. Each household had its own experimental methods, passed down through generations. Blending practical knowledge with a touch of superstition. Humor was a constant companion in medieval sleep. Pets, cats, dogs, and even pigs often created unpredictable situations. A cat sprawled across a father's chest, a dog nudging a child, or a pig claiming the warmest corner of the bed were everyday occurrences. Even minor mishaps, like someone slipping off a straw mattress or accidentally dislodging a pillow, were part of the nightly story. Households learned to navigate these situations with patience, laughter, and quiet ingenuity. Sleep was chaotic, communal, and full of personality as social performance played out nightly. Segmented sleep added another dimension. People often woke between first and second sleep for reflection, prayer, or minor chores. Candlelight flickered across walls, shadows danced, and the household quietly adjusted blankets, propped pillows, and nudged pets into place. This interlude was not seen as an inconvenience, but rather as a natural part of the night's rhythm. It allowed for contemplation, problem-solving, and sometimes even intimate conversation between household members. Bizarre. Bedtime tools were sometimes specific to the social status of the household. In noble homes, elevated beds, stacked mattresses, and propped cushions were combined with curtains or canopies to conserve warmth, protect against drafts, and provide privacy. Servants assisted in preparing these elaborate arrangements, adjusting blankets, and supporting props. In smaller homes, improvisation was key. Straw mattresses, extra blankets, and strategically placed pets provided the necessary comfort. Despite differences in wealth or status, the underlying goals remained the same: warmth, safety, and a peaceful night's rest. Personal rituals and superstition added further layers to sleep. People often believed that charms, herbs, or religious symbols could protect them from bad dreams or nocturnal spirits. Children received extra protection, talismans tucked under pillows, blankets carefully arranged, and older siblings or parents assigned as sleep guardians. Adults also participated, repeating prayers or arranging protective objects around the bed. These practices blended practicality, belief, and comfort, creating a nightly routine that was both functional and psychologically reassuring. Humorous moments often emerged naturally. Cats stole blankets, dogs claimed prime sleeping spots, and children occasionally rolled into inconvenient positions. Minor mishaps, slipping off a mattress, dislodging a pillow, or accidentally waking a neighbor were handled with patience and quiet laughter. In medieval households, sleep was not only about rest, it was a communal adventure, full of warmth, adaptability, and humor. Extreme sleeping postures remained common. People slept partially upright, curled tightly, or angled against walls or furniture. Blankets were stacked strategically, creating mini fortresses or towers for comfort and warmth. Each adjustment served a practical purpose, whether to conserve heat, prevent stiffness, or maintain safety. The medieval night was a living space, where every movement, adjustment, and minor mishap contributed to a dynamic and adaptive sleep environment. Pets, again, were central to the nocturnal rhythm. Cats prowled, dogs lay alert, and pigs or chickens contributed warmth and occasional comic relief. Sleep arrangements adapted around these companions, ensuring that both humans and animals found comfort. Noise, movement, and unpredictability were constants, but they were embraced with humor and ingenuity. Finally, medieval sleep was a blend of invention, ritual, communal interaction, and humor. Every night told a story, combining bizarre tools, unusual postures, protective charms, segmented sleep, pets, and minor mishaps. Families navigated the night with patience, creativity, and laughter, creating a shared nocturnal world that was both chaotic and comforting. Sleep was never passive. It was an art, a science, and a performance. Every blanket, cushion, pet, and ritual contributed to the living tapestry of medieval life, a cozy, humorous, and adaptive dance in the darkness of night. And now, as we reach the final chapter of our journey through the weird and wonderful world of medieval sleep, it's time to slowly settle into the calm rhythm of the night. After exploring bizarre habits, extreme sleeping contraptions, segmented sleep, pets, rituals, and humorous mishaps, we can imagine what it was like to lie down after a long day in a medieval household. The night begins quietly, though never completely silent. Cats curl themselves against heads, dogs rest loyally at feet, and even pigs or chickens find their cozy corners. Blankets are layered carefully, pillows propped just so, and every member of the household adjusts into a position that is uniquely theirs. Some sleep partially upright, some curled tightly, while others stretch comfortably in the warmth of shared blankets. Each person, each animal, each object has its role in the nocturnal choreography of medieval life. The room glows softly with the last flickers of candlelight, shadows dancing gently on walls. The chaos of earlier nights, the rolling children, mischievous pets, and shifting blankets has settled into a gentle rhythm. The human body relaxes, warmed by shared heat, lulled by the familiar noises of a living, breathing household. Even the minor quirks of nighttime slipped pillows, a cat pawing gently, or the snore of a dog become comforting, part of the lullaby of medieval life. As sleep deepens, minds drift into a dreamlike space. Perhaps the herbs hanging above the bed diffuse a calming scent, or the whispered prayers from earlier provide a sense of safety. Even the segmented sleep of the night, first sleep followed by wakefulness, and then second sleep, has taught medieval people patience, reflection, and adaptability. Each night is a gentle dance between rest, awareness, and the rhythm of life. The ingenuity of medieval sleep becomes clear. Every arrangement, every tool, every ritual serves a purpose. Extreme positions, angled boards, stacked blankets, elevated beds, and protective charms are not strange. They are evidence of human creativity meeting necessity. Every household, from humble village homes to noble estates, has perfected its own nocturnal symphony, balancing warmth, comfort, health, superstition, and humor. Even the humorous misadventures, the cat sprawled across a chest, a child nudging a sibling, or a dog claiming the warmest spot, fade into memory as the night deepens. In their place, the rhythm of breathing, the gentle warmth of bodies, and the quiet companionship of pets create a cocoon of safety and calm. The night, once chaotic, is now serene, as each member of the household drifts into restful sleep. Medieval sleep, strange and complex as it may have seemed, reminds us of human adaptability and resilience. It was a world where survival, creativity, humor, and communal care intertwined seamlessly. Every blanket, cushion, pet, and ritual had its purpose, every mishap its lesson, every moment of wakefulness its reflection. The night was alive with subtle energy, yet ultimately, it carried everyone gently into rest. So as we close our eyes and imagine the flickering candlelight, the soft warmth of shared blankets, and the quiet companionship of animals, we can appreciate the medieval night for what it truly was, a blend of necessity, ingenuity, humor, and calm. A world where sleep was an art, a performance, and a deeply human experience. Good night to the medieval household, to the pets, to the rolling children, to the carefully stacked blankets, and to every whisper, nudge, and charm that made sleep possible. Sleep, in its strange, inventive, communal, and humorous glory, was an adventure, and now it's time to drift peacefully into your own restful dreams.